The Cartoon History of the Universe 2, Vol.9, Family Matters. Oh, hi guys, and welcome to a new episode on this channel, and today we will be talking about the Cartoon History of the Universe 2, Vol.9, and let's get started. Family Matters. Now, this is all a thing that we will eventually know, and even if you search this thing up, you'll see that Lester Larry Gonick did a lot of research. So, how do we do all of this? Now let's go into Wikipedia and see it for a moment. Now, the Cartoon History of the Universe for Family Matters is a very different idea from what I've heard. It turns out Larry is right in the intro. He's right that most Westerners, even though he was born in San Francisco, which has a Chinatown, literally don't know a lot about the Chinese history. Okay, and basically everything that I've pretty much done right now is I have never known before. I mean, I'm not a Westerner, so I pretty much knew about it for a while, but most Westerners do not know about Chinese history, the culture, or language. And it was until Mr. Larry Gonick started fueling up for his time machine for Volume 9, that's when he started to know Chinese history a bit more. And if you want to learn more, then read this article on Wikipedia, even though it might not be the most reliable source. It's from the next one. Anyway, Chinatown is a good place. I mean, San Francisco is the place where all the Chinese residents have ever even been, the residents of the Chinese habitats literally help build, and no one really knows the Chinese history. Even the American/Chinese okay, what am I saying here? The American Chinese history, too. Also, according to Larry Gonick, you should write the mayor to complain all of that. Okay, my notes. So, you might wonder why the Chinese civilization was originally called the Yellow Civilization. Anyway, one of the reasons was because of the Yellow River, as we now name it, and another is because of the yellow dust, which actually affected the way it was called, that made the Yellow River sort of a bit yellowish. So, how does all this make sense? The yellow dust, for once. Why do we name the civilization after yellow dust and a river after those yellow dust, other than the color of the river, that is? The yellow dust is The yellow dust is one way to name a civilization, because the yellow dust was useful in a lot of fields. For one thing, it's a very calm color, and pretty much it's sort of useful for farming. That dust somehow created fertile land and moist fertile land for the Chinese. And that's useful. If you're a farmer, that is. And let's talk about the first Chinese dynasty. The first Chinese dynasty is called Zhou. And, I mean, Hsia. Okay, how do you pronounce this? It's spelled H-S-I-A. There was a lot of debate, and this is even a real dynasty. A lot of people even doubt that the first dynasty was even existed. Well, in Larry's terms, let's say it did exist. Asia was basically the people who did the most talking, and as much as I have ever learned anything from China, it's that the Hsia seriously needed something, a very big improvement, which came in the next dynasty, the Zhou. after the Hesia's last descendant died, and their last emperor has literally suicided himself by just leaving himself in the body palace and and dying, the Zhou dynasty took over. Now this is definitely real. The Zhou dynasty is a reformation. And this is where Confucius comes in. Now, Confucius can be a bit confusing, get it, at first, but then once you get the story, it's a really easy thing to understand. Unless you're like other religions, that is. So, Confucius is a philosopher, a Chinese philosopher who actually doubted almost everything about his own country, China. He doubted politics of the Zhou. He even doubted himself a bit like Socrates, to be honest, but in the Chinese way. But one thing that actually led him out of the Chinese way is because he really cared about music. He cared which type of music, he cared about order, he cared about religion, and he didn't really talk much about women, to be honest. And the rights. The only thing he says is that the men ruled everything. Was that the other philosopher? Yeah, that's the other philosopher, not Confucius. Confucius is well known, and his own texts are called Confucianism, and his teachings are also called Confucianism. And I should point out here by now that the queens are the real power of the China. How you become a king is basically, well, marry a queen. And so, if marrying a queen gives you the power, then what makes a king get some power? By marrying to a higher status, you basically get the overall betterness of everything and your royal blood. Also, no one's older than you, except I guess for the grandparents. So you're pretty much lucky. Unless you're like 106 years old, that is. And basically, some rulers have a very short-lived reigns because they were given this throne at a very old age. Like, I am 100 years, about 100 years old, and I had only been king for 1 year. Die, and then repeat, and yeah, I mean a bit more repeat until one guy seriously was young enough to rule for a longer time. So what do we learn here? I mean, we basically learned how the Chinese civilization now works. Silk, the compass, and other Chinese inventions were created long before those. Silk was created by boiling cocoons, most likely because someone wanted to eat them and found that mixture. And the compass was created after finding the magnetic field affects the compass. Seriously, Faraday's laws were technically discovered before Faraday discovered them. And every Chinese thought that the south was the north. South was typically our north, so that actually explains why this map is upside down. Look at the compass, it's upside down. And that's why the emperor's direction is south, and no one else can get south. Unless he is permitted to, that is. Every other building cannot be permitted to go south. Basically, that invented the swivel chair, where basically if you're going north and you're about to turn south, you basically turn your cart around and then swivel the chair to south. And those are some Chinese inventions, but we'll get into the other stories in Volume 10. Now this may be a film series of the whole cartoon history of the universe, and to be honest, I'm making a whole film series of almost every series on Earth I've ever read. I just hope it's not every one. So, let's see where China is in the next episode. Shut out and peace. Today's drawing of the day, Larry GONICK being mad. Special thanks to Claude the Cat for making this episode more cuter. Bye-bye!